dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew? Back on the channel with the new Mr. Ballen. We got inside his tent of horrors. Now, only time when you say with a title like this, the first thing my mind takes me to is something like Skid Row. You know what I'm saying? Somebody possibly homeless. Like you never know what's going on. You know, you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Or my other thought process goes to somebody who lives off in the woods and they do some crazy.
Out or doing some crazy.
Yeah, doing some crazy.
Yeah.
They're the only two things that comes to mind. So I don't know where we're going with this. That's the only two places I can go. But with that being said, we're going to find out today. Make sure you check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go, man. You want the first part, all you have to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
like it with a thumbs up.
All right, man. It said mature audience only. So you're not feeling mature. You know, I'm with you sometimes. I'm very immature. But when it comes down to situations like this, you might have to pack your bags up and go. So let's roll it.
In April of 2023, police in a little town in western India got a call about something horrible being discovered inside of this tent on a farmer's property. So the police went to this property, they found this patchwork tent, which was propped up against the stone wall on the back of the property, and the police, they opened it up, they looked inside, and at first they didn't really understand what they were looking at. It just looked like a sort of weird religious shrine of some kind. But upon closer examination, they realized what they were looking at was actually something very dark. This is one of those stories that goes in a totally random direction at the end, and I must warn you, it's quite graphic, so viewer discretion is advised. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, the next time the like button is not looking, secretly replace their medical marijuana stash with an ornery 200-pound Komodo dragon. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. On the evening of April 15th, 2023, a mother and father named Hansa and Himu Makwana stood on the front doorstep of a little shack in a little village in western India called Vinchia. With these two parents were their two kids, a son and a daughter, who were 12 and 13 years old respectively, and they were really excited because tonight they were going to be spending the night with their uncle and their cousins who lived in this shack right in front of them. And so moments later, the door to this shack opened up and immediately the two kids ran inside calling out for their cousins, and the uncle who had opened the door, he just smiled and said hello to Himu and Hansa, and the parents, they're calling after their kids to, please behave, listen to your uncle, be good, but they were already gone. And so finally the uncle said, don't worry, they're fine, we'll have a great night, we'll see you tomorrow. And so Himu and Hansa thanked him very much, and then they turned around, they grabbed each other's hands, and began walking out towards the dirt road that would take them back to their own home. The village that Himu and Hansa and their kids and their uncle and their cousins all lived in was a very poor, rundown farming community where for the most part people worked really hard but barely got by. But this night, as Himu and Hansa walked along this dirt road, passing by the shacks and tiny apartments and fields and livestock that were kind of all over the place, they weren't thinking about, the struggles of daily life in this village. Instead, they were thinking about how beautiful the village was that night. The sun was starting to set, and so the sky was this beautiful orange, and all the cows that had been out that day kind of wandering around the village were all starting to stand up and make their way back towards their stables for dinner, and with every step the cows made, the little bells on their neck would ring out. And so the scene in front of Himu and Hansa was so beautiful and peaceful that for a moment they just stopped on the road and kind of took in the sights and sounds. And then at some point, a group of cows who were making their way to their stable came up onto the road right where Himu and Hansa were, and very quickly the couple stepped back to make sure no mud or dirt got kicked up on their clothes. Now, Himu and Hansa were farmers by trade, and so on most days they would wear clothes that were covered in mud and dirt. But this night was different. Himu and Hansa were wearing their finest outfits, and they were not about to get them dirty. Hansa had on her beautiful red dress, and Himu was wearing a starched white button-up shirt. After the cows had crossed the road and suddenly the path was clear again for Himu and Hansa to walk on, Himu paused before taking a step, and he turned and just looked at Hansa. And Hansa, who lately had been feeling quite down, appeared to be very happy and radiant. And so Himu just smiled at Hansa, and at some point Hansa looked up and smiled at him, and then before long they were holding hands again, strolling down the road. A little while later, the couple turned onto their street, and just up ahead on the left side, just off the road, they could see their home, which was a small concrete and brick structure. But when the couple actually reached their property, instead of going in the front door, they walked around their property into the back side where all their crops were. They were growing peanuts and cotton. And Himu and Hansa just walked straight back away from their house through these fields all the way to the very back of their property, which was marked by this huge stone wall that was as tall as Hansa was. And when they reached this wall, they also reached their tent. It was like this patchwork tent they had built, with one side being supported by the stone wall, and the other side, the side closest to them as they approached it, was supported by these pikes they had driven into the ground. Inside of this tent was the family's shrine to the Hindu god Shiva. And over the last couple of days, Himu and Hansa had been working on this new addition to the family shrine. It had been a lot of work, but it was finally done, and tonight, Himu and Hansa were finally going to be able to use it. The couple stood outside the tent, taking in the sights and sounds of the beautiful sunset, and then, one after the other, they went inside the tent. The next day, sometime in the afternoon, Himu and Hansa's children returned from their uncle's house after sleeping over there the night before. And when they got to their home, they went in the front door and immediately called out for their parents. But their parents were not inside the house. And so these siblings walked all around the house and then went out the back door thinking maybe their parents were out in the fields working. But when they went outside, they saw their parents were not out there either. And so as the kids stood there kind of wondering where their parents were, the boy said to his older sister, maybe they're in the shrine. So the kids left the back of their house, they cut straight across the field all the way to that back stone wall where they found the shrine, the tent that was propped up against the wall. And right away, the kids noticed something was off about the shrine. Whenever their parents were in there praying, they could typically hear them from a distance as they walked up to the shrine. But now, standing right outside of it, it was totally silent. The kids finally lifted up the flap of the tent, and they looked inside, and once again, they did not see their parents. Instead, what they saw inside of the shrine was totally confusing.
I sure was thinking, I'm like, for one, in my head, I'm like, so whatever y'all had planned, that's the main reason why y'all dropped the kids off where y'all dropped the kids off. At the uncle house, is because y'all need that time to be able to do what y'all need to be able to do.
Without the kids.
Yeah, so the kids won't be involved and be a distraction. Y'all have time to focus. But honestly, when the kids went to the tent, I was expecting the parents being there dead or something.
Same. My mom was like, "Oh my gosh, these kids about to find their parents."
And then my thing is, why the kids come? Which all cultures are different. But I was like, why did the uncle bring them there? He didn't stay.
He didn't stay. Yeah. But it's don't seem like they were far. Like the uncle stayed.
They're walking distance. Which most countries like that, when they're in villages, most of the time the family ain't that far. It's always in walking distance. It might be a distance from each other, like not right now. Yeah. Not next door, but it's like, hey, we walk down the street, turn the corner.
Yeah, I know one of the kids was 12 and the other one was...
I can't remember the age. I ain't write down the age.
13 or 15, I can't remember.
But,
yeah.
And they looked inside, and once again, they did not see their parents. Instead, what they saw inside of the shrine was totally confusing. The shrine, which their parents typically kept absolutely immaculately clean at all times, looked kind of dirty. There was this weird rusty colored liquid kind of all over everything, including on some of the holy objects, like the picture and statue of Shiva. And in the middle of the shrine, where there was this fire pit, were these two hunks of meat that looked like they had been placed in the fire and then forgotten about. The kids knew their parents would never leave the shrine in this condition, nor would they spoil food and let it sit out on a fire and not eat it. And so they're thinking to themselves, what happened inside of this shrine, and where are my parents? And then, when they did one more look around the inside of the shrine, they noticed something that they had not when they first opened up the tent. And when they realized what it was, they screamed and took off running. This is the story behind what those children saw. The night before, when their parents, Himu and Hansa, stepped inside the tent, they looked around and surveyed the shrine. Right in the middle of the shrine on the ground was that fire pit, and then off to the right side of the fire pit was a small egg-shaped statue that was a statue of Shiva, and then next to the statue was a picture of Shiva. Shiva is a powerful figure in the Hindu religion. He is viewed as a god of both rebirth and of destruction, and when he is portrayed, like in the photo and in the statue that was inside of the shrine, his skin is smeared white with the ashes of corpses. He has crescent moons in his hair, and around his neck are snakes and skulls. And so Shiva is kind of viewed as both a loving, kind god and also one to be scared of. And so after the couple looked around at their shrine for a second, they got to work. Even though that night it was very hot and muggy outside, the first thing the couple did was get some firewood off to the side inside of this tent, put it in the fire pit, and start a fire. And then after the fire was built, Hansa began sprinkling orange flower petals all around the statue and picture of Shiva. And at the same time, Himu got out a piece of paper and began writing a note. And as he wrote, his hand shook with nervous anticipation of what they were going to do that night. And then after Himu finished writing this letter, he and Hansa dipped their thumbs in ink and pressed them to the bottom of this note, kind of like signing the note. And then after the note was complete, they folded it up and tucked it between the statue and the picture of Shiva. Then Himu and Hansa turned their attention to their newest addition to the shrine. The new addition basically just looked like a big door frame, but without a door in the middle of it. It was made out of scrap metal that Himu and Hansa had gathered around their village, and if you were standing in front of this structure, it would almost look like you were looking at a doorway into the fire pit. And also draped over the top of this rectangular frame was a white rope. And so Himu and Hansa moved over right in front of the structure as if they were going to walk through the frame into the fire. But instead of doing that, they knelt down right at the base of the structure, right in the dirt, and then they both, in unison, began to say a prayer out loud. And then after the prayer was done, Himu reached up and grabbed one end of this white rope, and he began pulling it until it was tight. And then he pulled it a little bit more and a little bit more until he had it right where he wanted it, and then he held the rope steady. And then Himu, still holding onto this rope, along with Hansa, very carefully got down onto their bellies, Himu being very cautious not to give any slack to the rope or pull it any farther. And then once they were in position on their bellies, all they would have heard was the crackling of the fire in front of them, and all they would have felt was their hearts beating in their chest. Now, very likely, Himu and Hansa were terrified at this point, but this was their moment. They had come too far, and they knew they had to finish this ritual. And so, with one last loving look at each other, the couple nodded, and then turned their attention back to the fire, and then Himu let go of the rope. The rusty-colored liquid that Himu and Hansa's children would discover inside of this shrine the next day was Himu and Hansa's blood. And the two hunks of meat that their children saw in the fire pit were their parents' decapitated heads. The children realized this was the case when they scanned around the tent one more time and noticed their parents' headless bodies lying side by side at the base of the structure. That was one of
What the fuck? Yo, no. Why? But why the?
Yeah. Yeah.
But why though? You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
that's my only question.
Headless bodies lying side by side at the base of the structure. That was what, of course, caused the children to run outside and go find the police. This new addition to the shrine, the metallic structure, was a homemade guillotine. A guillotine is a device that kills people by cutting off their heads. The white rope that Himu had pulled on was connected on one side to a very heavy metal blade. And so when he was pulling the rope, he was pulling that blade up off the ground until it was positioned right above them. And then he held it steady. And then when he let go, the blade fell straight down, striking the backs of their necks, decapitating them instantly and sending their heads rolling forward into the fire, as designed. When the police arrived at the shrine, they would find that letter that Himu and Hansa had written and then signed with their thumb, tucked near the statue and the picture. And in this note, Himu and Hansa would not give a reason for why they did this, but they would say, "This was our choice, we wanted to do this, we just ask that our living family members take care of our children and our elderly parents." No one has been able to give a reason for why Himu and Hansa intentionally decapitated themselves and then let their heads burn in a fire. Their family has said there was no indication that the couple was going to commit suicide. I mean, they seemed happy. They were not financially well off, but they were not financially struggling either. It seemed like their life was good. And so basically, this whole thing came out of left field. As for the police, they believe that Himu and Hansa must have been performing some sort of black magic ritual where they believed if they lopped their heads off and allowed them to roll forward and burn in this fire, that somehow would bring them closer to perhaps Shiva or some other god or some other higher power. But as of today, no one knows. So that's going to do it. If you enjoyed today's story, remember we have hundreds more.
I ain't gonna hold you. This episode kind of pissed me off. The reason why, we left with no answer to the ending.
Right? My only question was why. The only thing I could think of, like just with the whole scenery, was that it was some type of
ritual
that they were performing, that they felt in their hearts
but
needed to be done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if it was for possibly for their kids and for their family. Like, I don't know.
And that's the thing. You don't know what they, you know what I'm saying, what they have been praying for and felt like they needed to do to maybe... They felt like they had to sacrifice themselves to, you know, maybe this will bring some type of, you know, something to their family, whether it's like some type of finance or a better life or I don't know. That's the thing. We don't know because the family don't know. So they didn't leave a reason as to why it's not something that, you know, I was like, what? I just hate... My thing is, I'm like, damn, their kids had to find them. You know what I'm saying?
That's one of the saddest things, that your kids ended up finding you. Now they have to live
like that image in their head. First of all,
the kid, like,
and then not knowing why, like.
Cause I ain't gonna hold you. When they said it was some meat left in the fire, I said, that ain't meat. That's a body. Like, that's part of a body. Mm-hmm. I'm like, somebody. But my thing was, I was thinking somebody was hiding in a tent, and when they went to the tent, somebody jumped out and attacked them, and I was like, and then possibly cut some of their body up to this. So that's what my head was thinking. I'm like, damn, the meat is that, but to find out it's their head, what absolutely, and then to go in that direction that y'all did it, and you leave no reason, you know these kids are going to grow up in question. Well, maybe not, because again, all cultures, all religions are different. Yeah, they might, in their mind, understand that it was something that had to be done. It was a sacrifice, because in a lot of cultures, people do weird sacrifices that a lot of other cultures
doesn't make sense to you, but it makes sense to them.
Yeah, and so sometimes we might question things just based off our way of life and thinking, that makes absolutely normal sense to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would you do that? But they like, yo, that is part of.
Yeah.
You just like, okay, that's y'all. Like, and in all honesty, you gotta. Sometimes you might not want to, but you gotta respect their culture.
Yeah, you may not understand it, but I guess
because you would want somebody to respect yours.
Yeah, most definitely.
So why disrespect somebody else's? So at the end of the day, I would like to know why. Like, what was the reason why? But at the end of the day, I don't think we will find out unless somebody else has been through that same ritual process and understand the outcome. Because I highly doubt they are the first people who have done that. There gotta be something. There's an explanation out there, but I do believe it's something with the religion or like black magic that us would not know about. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, again, I feel bad for the kids. Yeah. For one, they have lost their parents, but also they are the ones who had to find their parents in that. Yeah. And that's scarring. Like, that is like, because when y'all first walked in there, y'all don't see nothing. Damn. Y'all looked at the shrine and didn't see the bodies. And then y'all looked over and y'all, because it was one picture Ballen showed and the bodies was kind of blurred out. And I'm like how were y'all?
What?
How were y'all able to even set this up with nobody even paid, like, peep game?
Because it looked like it was on the backside of it.
Yeah.
So it looks like they were on the backside. So when you're coming in, you're only going to see their front side unless you walk around to the backside of it. And then I guess them just scanning one more time, and then you just kind of like, some just kind of looks out of the ordinary.
Because they was in the back corners.
Yeah, so.
And so, this was the thing.
Yeah, that was the thing. You can kind of see.
Oh, but how his body in? Well, that's probably after they moved the body. So their body was behind the guillotine structure. So if you just go straight in, you won't see the body.
You're not really paying attention because you're not looking for that. You know what I'm saying? So
you'll have to actually walk around. Damn. And when he said that, like, it was like this color, I was like, that sounds like blood. Like a dark rusted color. I said, that's blood. Dried up blood, man.
That's sad.
Yeah, man. If you want to have studied this religion or understand something pertaining to this, and you might can give us some more, like, deeper insight.
To give us, some insight, some understanding, or something like that.
Hey, feel free to post in the comments, man, because I'm absolutely lost on this one, man. I'm like, it's very vague. Yeah. But, hey, man, with that being said, make sure y'all spam us up. Let us know y'all thoughts and opinions about it in the comment section down below. But as always, I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are
Kid and C.
No.
Come on.
You little tired ass.
Come on.
A little tired ass. You tired. I know you
I'm not tired.
You are. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are. We are, y'all.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me.